and walked among us. And so I'm not going to stay in the pulpit. I'm going to walk among you. I'm Pastor Dee. You're probably wondering, who is this woman? We never saw her around here before. The beginning of July, I retired. Actually, I moved here the beginning of July, retired the middle of June, and moved to Sacramento. My sons live in Oakland and San Francisco, and who can afford the Bay Area, right? So I'm in Sacramento and much nearer my kids than I've been in a very long time. Just loving being in Sacramento, maybe you'll see, and in Rio Linda as well. Pastor Kirsten asked if I would preach while she's off with all of the kids. That's why we had no children's sermon today. They're all at camp, having a great time, I'm sure. So because of that, she asked if I would come and be with you. And so I thank you for welcoming me. It's a special treat for me because I haven't been in the pulpit in 4 months. And that feels like a really long time. So I want to make one comment about I'm not going to talk about Timothy, but I want to make one comment because there's something that people miss a lot of times. The scriptures that Paul is talking about do not include the Gospels. They weren't written yet. He's talking about the Old Testament. And so I just want you to be aware, he's talking about the importance of the Old Testament, and yet Paul was our greatest evangelist. So you'll find that I also talk about both the Old and New Testament. I have many favorite passages, but these two passages, the first reading and the Gospel, are a couple of my favorite passages and ones I enjoy preaching on. Because I don't know about you, but I was kind of raised, you don't argue with God. I mean, after all, somebody that's bigger and smarter and more powerful and, just created everything, you don't argue with somebody like that, right? But that wasn't the Jewish tradition at all. This isn't the only place where we see, in the Old Testament, where we see people arguing with God. And here Jesus brings that old tradition even into the New Testament with his parable about the woman and the unjust judge. Now, having said that, if God gives you a mission, you jolly well ought to do it. Okay? Whatever your ministry is individually, as a congregation, as the ELCA, as Christians in the United States and around the world, God calls us into things. And I don't know about you, but my experience is God calls us into things that are bigger than we can ever imagine that we could do. God calls us into, God called me into ministry, which to this day I think is a great cosmic joke. But here I am. God calls us to do big things. Okay, so what God calls, it's a good idea to follow. But at the same time, God wants a real, vital, personal relationship with us. I've learned as a pastor to not tell people for the first hour when I meet them that I'm a pastor. First of all, it's so much fun to watch them go, oh gee, what did I say? But I've also discovered that when people find out that I'm a pastor, they think, number one, that I'm going to judge them. And number two, they start lying to me. Now, not in a bad way. They're not trying to be malicious. But they don't want me to know all of those things that they aren't so proud of. And so they start hiding all of that. And I think often our relationship with God is a lot like that. Hi God, it's such a wonderful day and I'm so happy and I'm so thankful we won't talk about the problems with my kids and, the fight I just had with my spouse, or how lonely I feel, or whatever the feelings are that you're having, gee, maybe I shouldn't take those to God. Or, God, I am just so mad right now. How could you do this to me? We think that we shouldn't take those feelings to God either. But if you read the psalmist, the psalmist says, I'm so mad you should slay their children. I mean, the psalmist just really lays it out there. And I think God wants that kind of a real, vital relationship. Not that we're disrespectful, but that we're honest and vulnerable. That with God it is safe to say, I really don't like how things are going right now. I really don't like what's happening. And that's what this widow is doing with this judge. She's coming and saying, this isn't fair, it isn't right, fix it. Now, that's not the same as saying, oh God, I screwed up, now you fixed my messes. I really got myself in trouble this time, God, you're going to bail me out. She's not saying that. She's saying, God, you are a righteous judge, and I expect righteousness. I expect justice. And God fully expects that when we see unfairness in our world, that we're going to speak up. That we're going to say, that's not right. Jesus had a style of preaching sometimes where he said, if human beings do this, how much more do you think God will do that? If a father knows not to give his child a stone when he asks for a loaf of bread, don't you think God will take care of you too? I don't think Jesus in any way is suggesting that God is like the uncaring judge who says, I don't respect God or anyone and I'm not going to listen. That's not what God is. He says, if even that judge will listen to a widow who has no voice and no right and is coming before the judge with no one to stand with her, if even that guy will listen to her, don't you think God will listen to those who have no voice? Don't you think God will listen to those who receive injustice in our world? Those who are marginalized and have no one to speak for them? I think he's also inviting us to be those voices. To look around us and to say, who's getting forgotten? Who's getting left out? Who doesn't get included in our society? Whether it's due to poverty, race, religion, I sure wouldn't want to be a Muslim in this country today. It's a scary thing. Now, I'm not saying we support terrorists, but I'll never forget, I was in a Spanish continuing ed class. And a classmate of mine was from Turkey, and he was absolutely the brightest and best. He was learning Spanish and English, which wasn't his native language, and he was whipping all of us. He was just, and in such a sense of humor, he was a delight in the class. Somehow one day in class, the question came up, what religion are you? And I saw his face turn with fear. Because he had delighted in this class and these friends that he had made. And when he told them that he was Muslim, what would happen? And we all went, oh, okay, and went on with class. But he was afraid to tell the people he had made friends with over a year of classes together what his religion was. It's not hard to find people who are forgotten. I'm giving that example just because that's one example of how people get forgotten. We have a beautiful diversity and variety in Sacramento that's way more diverse than Northeast Ohio. And I've delighted in it. We have an awareness here that we often don't have in Ohio of what it means to be an immigrant. And how tough that can be in the schools. And how those folks can get forgotten. In Ohio, we had, in one of the churches I was in, we had an awareness of what it meant for women to be in sexual, not prostitutes, but slavery, literally, sexual trafficking. And we're acting to make changes in our community where women can be safe. I don't expect that you will act in every area that I've named. And I could go on and name others. There's a pastor in Sacramento whose heart is for domestic violence, for people who don't have a voice. But I think God truly expects that we will argue with God. And we will come and we will say, that's not fair, God. And keep coming and saying, that's not fair, until it changes. I think God also expects that we will come before the uncaring judges in our world and say, that's not fair. If you have the power to fix it, you need to fix it. So that everyone is valued. You see, I fully believe that God looks at you and me and every single person in the world and says, you are precious. You are made in my image and I delight in you. And God invites us to speak into our world so that everyone we touch hears that message and comes to know just how absolutely precious they are in the sight of God. We live in a world that worships money and status and says some people are worth more than others. I am a Christian because Jesus was really clear that the widow that had no voice and no rights was as valuable and precious as the judge that refused to listen to him. And he was talking to the crowds who often had no voice, knowing that in just a week or two, he would be standing before a judge who would not listen to him, who would hang him on a cross. And he did that for our sake. That we might be able to walk into God's temple and say, it's not fair. It's not right. Every person is precious. And those are the prayers that God listens to. Thanks be to God.